and encourage everybody else who's down here, if they can get to the computer, to do it. Okay, I'm ready.
Okay.
All right. All right. Okay, so I'm Michelle, and I'm going to give you guys some really important safety tips. All the things that Scott told you are really the biggest thing that you can do is to dress properly and pay attention to the weather to avoid the complications of the cold weather. Of course, we all know our weather is going to get pretty cold pretty soon, and the biggest thing that the biggest danger to you, more so than the temperature, is the wind. That is the most dangerous aspect of the cold. What you should do before you come to the occupation is check the weather, specifically the wind chill factor, and pay close attention to that. You know, when we listen to the weather, what it really feels like, the actual, you know, the temp that combines the wind chill factor with the actual temperature to give you the real feel, I think they call it on news. That is important. When the wind chill is, which it sometimes does get pretty cold here in Cleveland, our wind chill factor, more than the absolute temperature, is the most important thing. When the wind chill factor is below minus 27, which that's pretty cold, and it happens actually quite a bit in January and towards the end of December, you can get frostbite within minutes, less than 4 minutes, having skin exposure. Now that's really dangerous. If that comes to pass and the weather is that severe, we may want to think about just refraining from being outside during those hours. If you're going to be here, stay out of the wind when the wind chill is that cold. Now, let's talk about first frostbite. Frostbite is the first stage of skin damage related to cold weather. Essentially, your skin is starting to freeze. Many of us have had frostbite. Sure, you know, it's just the very beginning. And when your skin chaps after being out in the cold, and you feel on your lips, and when your cheeks, some of us have gotten that red, and then all of a sudden it's kind of hard. You know, that's frostbite. But that's a very mild case. When it gets a little bit worse, you may see the color of your skin is white. You may have numbness and tingling in your fingers, and we've kind of all had that when we've been really cold. Like But if you don't fix that condition, frostbite is actually damage to the very first layer of skin, and you need to warm your skin and keep it warm with warm hands is the best way, and if that actually happens, and then by keeping it warm. So what's also dangerous is going from very cold to very warm to very cold again, because essentially you're freezing, thawing your skin, and that causes cell damage, and those cells have to stay intact to keep your skin intact to do their job, which is to protect you. Now, frostbite can get worse if you do not recognize it, or you're staying out in the cold and you're not relieving yourself. It can turn into frostburn. Now, frostburn is a medical emergency. Frostburn means that you have not only damaged the superficial, the top layer of your skin, but everything underneath, all the way down into the bone, and that can sometimes result in amputation. So that is something we don't want anybody to have. Now, the signs of frostburn are if you touch your finger, you should be able to see it turns white and the color comes quickly back in. Now, when you're starting to get frostbite and frostburn, you'll see that the color doesn't come back quite as quickly. You can make it turn white. Should be less than 3 seconds. Okay, so now we of course don't want anybody to get frostburn. If anybody does have signs of frostburn, which is essentially that numbness and tingling, but it's gotten worse, and you may even not feel your extremity. You may have no feeling in your extremity at this point, which is a very dangerous sign. Again, that needs medical attention. You must be treated by a medical professional when you have suffered that degree of freezing. There's a saying, of course, it is related to hypothermia. People say, A person's, when they used to bring people in off the street, they're not dead until they're warm and dead. And that's because of what happens in hypothermia. So if you think about that word, that little analogy, it will help you to assess hypothermia. Now, hypothermia is when your core body temperature goes down below 98.6. The reason our body relies on a lot of different chemical reactions, and chemical reactions are very temperature related. Once that temperature is changes to a point where those chemical reactions can't occur and other things start to happen, then we're in big trouble. That's big trouble. So what you need to do is be together. Always have two people together. I think you guys are already doing that, but it's really important in the winter. The first signs of hypothermia are really very basic. Shivering, you know, non-stop shivering, and actually the danger comes if you've been out here shivering and shivering. That's your body's way of making its own heat, because your muscles burn energy when they're moving, and that creates its own heat. Now, when you're out here, you can do this. You can walk, you can move. You should be moving whenever you can, because that creates heat for your body. Now, shivering is a great way for your body to make heat, unless your body runs out of energy to shiver, which can happen when you're shivering vigorously. You don't realize how much energy you're using up. When you run out of energy, you'll stop shivering. You'll also stop making heat, and that's when the real problems start. So when you see somebody stop shivering, that's actually a really bad sign. A really bad sign. That means you've gone too far. It's really dangerous. As a matter of fact, at that point, hopefully nobody ever gets to that point, but that's something you should watch for. That will require medical attention too. And you'll see that won't happen all by itself. Other things happen. As we've probably all heard, when you're cold, your body constricts the blood flow to the vital organs in the brain, the most important parts, right? And actually, so that's the reason that your fingers, your toes, your cheeks and your nose and your ears are the most susceptible to frostbite. Keep your skin covered, and that's why, because these are the first areas to shut down blood circulation. So they're actually not getting warmed anymore. So you've got very little blood flow going here, because it's all going here and here, the most important parts. Now, every once in a while, your body will loosen up and let some blood in. But as things go, as you get colder, if your body senses that the temperature is going down, it will stop. It will shut that off. So, so with hypothermia, other things start to happen when it's really dangerous, and that is a sign that the blood flow is no longer getting to here and here, the very important places. You may notice that the person you're with may not be aware of these things themselves. So that's why it's important to be together. Get to know the people that you're with. Most of you who have been occupying do. But take a few minutes to kind of get a baseline, like, you know, what the person's kind of, how their speech sounds, what, you know, what they look like when they're alert, so that you can tell when something's changing. Now, the thing that, so what will happen as your core body temperature starts to drop is you'll become confused. You may not be able to speak clearly. Start using the wrong words. You know, you might not be able to find the right word and start calling things the wrong thing. You might get confused about where you're at, what day it is, what time it is, what you're supposed to be doing right now. You might become clumsy. You know, not be able to walk very smoothly. Even in the early stages, that might just mean tripping. Later, it might really just mean just complete lack of coordination. All of these things are really bad, and they really mean you've been out here way too long. These are the things we want to avoid completely. Nobody should be out here long enough that these things start to happen. But if they do, hypothermia is also a medical emergency. If somebody really exhibits the signs of true hypothermia, they need to go to the emergency room. They need to go to the emergency room. Now, you can, with basic frostbite, you know, being exposed to cold weather, you can usually just self-care yourself by getting out of the cold and getting warm. But these are the real dangerous things I wanted to give you guys a heads up on, because well, the other thing you should be aware of is that tall, thin people are at higher risk for hypothermia than other body types. And the reason for this is that they're exposed and they have less insulation. So the wind and being wet are your two worst enemies. Keep that in mind. Be dry, because you will lose your body temperature as much as 50% faster, and in some cases 80, just by being wet, which is why all the clothing recommendations that Scott gave you about things that pull away that wetness are very important, because your body temperature can plummet just by being wet, and that in itself is dangerous. So you need the insulation, you need the right gear. If you don't have the right gear, don't come out here. That's really important too. If you see somebody out here and they don't have the right gear, they don't look like they're dressed warmly enough for that day, give a shout out. See if anybody can bring them something. If not, get them inside.
Yeah, something like this on a day like today where it's not too hot, not too cold, or where there's a bit of a wind, isn't too much of an issue. But as it gets colder, don't leave the house with just a fleece or something on. Have a layer over it. It is a quick way to, the wind will cut through you. I was here a few nights ago, and even with all my layers, I could still feel the wind when I came outside of the tent. So I stayed overnight on Wednesday. I could still feel that wind pierce right through me. But having those layers made it so that once I got back into the tent, I was able to stay warmer.
So those are the really big things. I'm going to bring you a little binder this week that you guys can keep in the tent that has the warning, symptoms, and signs for reference. I recommend everybody look at them, just to be safe. The key to being safe is to be prepared. And that means be prepared before you leave the house in the way you dress. Be prepared to know what to watch for in other people and keep each other safe. And I'm sure avoid the wind and stay dry. And I think that we'll be able, people camp in very extreme conditions all year round in a lot of places, Minnesota, Canada, and they make it, Alaska, and it's just because they're smart. So be smart, be safe, and you guys will have a great occupation through the winter.
Well, thank you very much for your wisdom.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Thanks, everybody.
Yay!